Afternoon Year 10, I hope you're all well. We don't have a live lesson today, but you do have a task, and I will be on a Google Hangout should you have any questions about it. So today you're looking at an event that was the bombing of Dresden. It was definitely one of the turning points in World War II. It was one of the events in which very much made it pretty clear that Germany was going to lose. When you look at World War II, particularly in a British environment, you often look at the bombings, the Germany bombing Britain, and you don't often look at the other side. But Dresden is a city in Germany, and it was bombed really badly. I mean, as you can see from this picture here. So your title is Dresden Bombings, Were They Justified? And you're going to be using sources to have a look at different opinions about the bombing and basically come to an opinion on whether you think it was justified or not. So first thing I'd like you to do, starter, what questions would you ask this source? So just list down a couple, 2 or 3 questions you might ask about this source here. It's a quite famous photograph of Dresden from an aerial viewpoint. You can see it in a larger scale here. So it was a punishing 3-day Allied bombing attack from February the 13th to the 15th in the final months of the war. Dropped around 2,700 tons of explosives and decimated the German city, so destroyed it. Dresden was important because it was important for Germany's rail and road network. So it was basically designed to stop all transportation routes. It came less than a month after lots of US troops were killed in Germany's kind of last offensive, which was called the Battle of Bulge. And this also took place about 3 weeks after Auschwitz, the death camp, had been discovered. So tensions were at an all-time high. So in an effort to force a surrender, the Dresden bombing was intended to terrorize the civilian population. So it was civilians, wasn't soldiers. With the German Luftwaffe destroyed and anti-aircraft in shambles, the Royal Air Force only lost 6 planes. On the ground, thousands of small fires merged into a firestorm, and they created, loads, basically created this, absolutely decimated the city because of these firestorms. So it dealt a devastating assault on civilians. Less than 3 months later, in 8 days, Adolf Hitler committed suicide in his underground bunker, and the German forces surrendered. So this is a huge point in the war. It estimated about 35,000 to 150,000 people killed in 2 days. So what I want you to do is have a read of these 3 different sources. That's what you're going to be focused on today. Source 1, Victor Gregg. He was a prisoner of war held in Dresden at the time of the bombing. Source 2 is from history.com. Source 3 is from a Royal Air Force, so British person speaking about their experiences. So have a read of each. And I just want you to summarize, what does each person say? Do they say that the bombing was justified? By justified, I mean fair. What's their opinion? So just summarize what's their opinion in this box. Then I want you to, again, to have a look at the 3 different sources, and I want you to answer these 4 questions. So which sources think the bombing was justified? Which think it was not justified? 2, what evidence from the sources tells you this? 3, why do the accounts differ? Why are they different? Are the differences facts or opinions? So have a look at the captions, who wrote it? What motives will the individual have for giving their account? Why was it written? And having read these accounts, do you think the bombing was justified or not, in your opinion? Challenge 1, which I would encourage you to attempt, is which source do you think is most reliable, so trustworthy? Which source do you think is the most useful, which tells you the most? This is slightly different than being reliable. So here's just some pictures. So by 1945, the German people were in a desperate state. Food supplies were low. 3.5 million German civilians, so ordinary people, had died. Refugees were fleeing the advancing Russian army to the east. 3 months after the bombing of Dresden, Germany's war was over. Hitler, Goebbels, the propaganda minister, and other war leaders committed suicide or were captured. The Nazi regime was in tatters, and Germany was split into occupied zones. So, final task, read this statement How useful do you think it is? Choose either very to limited and explain why. Next one, read this one. Same again, very to limited and explain why. Next one, very to limited and explain why. Okay, that is your work. Upload it onto a Google Doc. It is due, really should be done by the end of the day, but due by tomorrow is fine. Okay, any questions, come on the Google Hangout or give me an email.